Good afternoon. My name is Michal Snehota, and I'm part of the team Architecture and Environment with my laboratory. We would like to present a project named Transport of Water and Suspended Solids and Heat in Engineered Soils of Urban Green Infrastructure. Why we are interested in water transport in urban green infrastructure soils? This is due to effect named surface sealing that occurs in urban areas that changes the water regime in soils by sealing the soil surface with pavements and buildings and decrease infiltration, decrease also evapotranspiration, and decrease groundwater recharge. And in past hundreds of years, the aim was to remove water from cities as fast as possible to keep buildings dry. But nowadays, with climate change and increased urbanization, the aim is to retain water in cities. And this water can be used then for cooling the cities via evapotranspiration. And also we are interested in increasing groundwater recharge and to have more water in groundwater. To fight this effect of soil sealing, the blue-green infrastructure that utilizes vegetation and infiltration is being implemented in cities. And the key part of the green infrastructure, besides of vegetation, is soil. And the soil must be very well designed, and the whole system of green infrastructure must be very well engineered, because our cities are used to this fast drainage, and we are now increasing water content in the cities. And so the aim is to be able to model very well the processes in green infrastructure soils. And here, many processes are still not well understood. The project we solved was under Czech Science Foundation grant, and partners were UCEEP and CVUT, Faculty of Civil Engineering of CVUT in Prague. The team has two parts. One was more focused on experiments and one was more focused on modeling. And I will briefly show some activities and results of the project. So first we were working on experimental green roofs. In this part we focused on 4 types of green roofs in our small installation here on the UC building. And we were testing vegetation by sedum cuttings, which is more sparse vegetation, and sedum carpets. And we were heavily monitoring these 4 test plots of green roofs. The results of such monitoring is, for example, rainfall runoff relationship, which shows how much water from the precipitation, from the rain, how much water is drained into the storm sewer system. And on the graph on the right is, this is a graph of so-called runoff coefficient. That means how much water from rainfall actually appeared as a runoff, how much water left the roof. So the points that are very low in the graph, like these green dots, these are rain events that did not produce any outflow. So all water was retained in this green roof. And these points, these blue and green points, are runoffs from green roof that was composed of finer soil with different properties than the red dots that were more permeable and retain less water. And it was interesting. Normally runoff coefficient is given like one number, But here we can see that runoff coefficient depends on many factors, on rainfall amount, rainfall intensity. And finer substrate produced runoff coefficient from 5% to 65%, whereas coarser substrate produced higher runoff coefficients. It was also interesting that for coarser substrate, rainfall produced some runoff in 50% of cases. That means 50 rainfall events, 50% of rainfall events produced some runoff, whereas in finer substrate, less of rainfall events produced outflow. And the data from these green roofs are available for modeling, which I will show later. The second experiment was experimental rain garden that is also called bioretention cell. And it is basically a dip in the ground that can be filled with water during rainfall and then slowly drains after the rainfall. It's also heavily instrumented with water content sensors and tensiometers. And we also monitor water balance, so how much water flows in and how much water flows out. In this case, transformation of the rainfall is slightly different. We see a single episode here. This is the rainfall, which has quite high intensity, and it produces runoff that has much smaller water flows. In this case, in opposite to green roofs, in this type of rain garden, the amount of runoff, amount of water that flows out of these rain gardens is almost the same like the amount that flows in, but the flow rate, so the loading of the sewer system is much smaller, and also it is delayed, so it doesn't exhaust the outflow doesn't exhaust the sewer system that much. An analysis of rainfall runoff on the right side, it shows that some rainfalls produced less runoff, and these are mostly those where soil was initially dry in bioretention cells. And also this experiment produced a lot of data for numerical modeling, which is the final goal. So to show some modeling output, which was mostly the work of the group from Michal and Vojta Skala from Faculty of Civil Engineering, the experiments were modeled first in first round. They were modeled with very simple approach of nonlinear reservoir, and here they modeled individual rainfalls, and we see that there's quite good fit for some of the rainfalls, even with this simple approach. Here, this is the rainfall, and this is the corresponding runoff from linear and nonlinear reservoir models. And this is the different test plot which produced much larger runoff, and also this was quite well captured with the model. But using this approach, we only can model one episode, one rainfall. To model whole season, for example, one growing season, we have to use more complex models. And here, again, Vojta Skala with Michal, they implemented model that is normally used for simulation of water flow in a natural setting, for example, on a hill slope, and they modified it for modeling a whole season of the green roof. In this case, the coupled model of water flow and heat was used. So at the same time, they modeled water flow, these runoff peaks, and also temperature, with modeling advection and convection at the same time. So this is very, very promising output, and we are able probably to model and to help with models design better green roofs for local conditions and for possible climate change. There are still some mysteries in soil hydrology regimes of green infrastructure soils, because some parameters in models, they change in time. They change in short term and also long term. And we need to understand more why these parameters are changing. So we do implement more advanced experimental techniques that at a very local scale help us to understand underlying processes like bypass flow or preferential flow or finger flow that introduces local non-equilibrium and non-uniqueness of these key parameters. And here we used neutron tomography to understand very in detail how the infiltration occurs in soil that were made in the laboratory. And we also have published these results. So with this, I would like to thank for attention. With this, I would like to thank for attention. And that's it.